Captain Rylan Voss spat the bitter taste of failure mixed with Ventaran dust from his mouth, a gritty reminder that the universe really hated his guts. Not that he needed a reminder. The Galactic Alliance's bounty on his head did that job just fine. "You reckon the Alliance gets their kicks from pissing on every campfire we light?" asked Jax, his second-in-command. The man had a face like a broken toaster, permanently set to sarcastic, and a mind sharp enough to cut through the crap with a dull spoon. "Nah," Rylan replied, "they probably just hate Esmores." The crystal forests of Ventara gleamed around them, jagged shards of translucent minerals that looked like they'd been crafted by a drunk god with a fetish for disco balls. They were supposed to be majestic, but all Rylan saw was one more place to die. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Rylan said, his voice dripping with enough sarcasm to drown a small planet. "Like an art exhibit nobody asked for and nobody wants to pay to see." Jax snorted, crouching beside a crystalline tree that resembled a skewered marshmallow from hell. "It's a shame. I was hoping for something less stabby." The rest of the Mindwave Brigade, that merry band of psychic misfits and sarcastic survivors, were spread out, keeping watch or pretending to. The Alliance had a habit of popping in like uninvited guests at a funeral, your funeral. Rylan scratched his head, feeling the weight of his helmet. He missed Earth, not the scorched, plague-ridden mess it had become, but the Earth from his memories. The one with skies that didn't try to kill you and soil that didn't bite back. "Remember when we used to worry about things like taxes and lawn maintenance?" Rylan asked, more to himself than anyone else. The past seemed like a joke without a punchline. Jax chuckled. "Yeah, and neighbors who thought the biggest threat was a dog crapping on their lawn. Now it's a little more who's gonna vaporize us today." "Balance," Rylan replied, his grin humorless. The universe's way of saying we haven't suffered enough yet. Amidst the jagged beauty of Ventara, Layla was tinkering with some tech junk she salvaged from their last skirmish. She called it repurposing, though it often looked more like creative destruction. She had a knack for turning scrap into something that occasionally worked until it exploded. "Think you can make us a bomb out of that, Layla?" Rylan asked. Layla didn't look up, her hands busy amidst a tangle of wires. "Depends. You want it to blow up now or later, surprise me." Rylan turned his gaze back to the horizon, the shards of the crystal forest stretching out like the bones of some long-dead beast. Humanity was the scapegoat of the galaxy, blamed for a plague they didn't start but sure as hell couldn't stop. He wondered if Earth was even still there or if it had finally collapsed under the weight of its own failures. "We're gonna need a plan, Cap," Jax said, breaking Rylan's reverie. "Can't just sit here and hope the Alliance forgets about us." Rylan sighed. "They've got minds like elephants, with guns, psychic elephants with a grudge and a vendetta." Jax grinned. "And we've got minds like jackals. Crafty, hungry, and not afraid to eat the competition." Before Rylan could respond, a shimmer in the distance caught his eye. Instincts honed by years of dodging death fired on all cylinders. Incoming, the brigade snapped to attention, weapons at the ready, eyes scanning for threats. The shimmer resolved into the sleek, ominous shape of an Alliance cruiser. "Well," Layla said, finally tearing her gaze from her project. "At least they have the courtesy to come in broad daylight." Rylan chuckled darkly. "Yeah, and I was just thinking it's been too long since we nearly died." The cruiser hovered, its presence oppressive as it blotted out the harsh Ventaran sun. Rylan's fingers itched near his weapon. Not that shooting at an Alliance cruiser with a pistol would do much more than annoy them, but it's the thought that counts. "Options?" Jax asked, his tone suddenly all business. "Fight, die, or run," Rylan replied. "Pick two. Running sounds good, yeah, but they'll just follow us like a bad smell." The cruiser unleashed a beam of light, a searchlight from hell skying the crystalline landscape. Rylan could almost feel the contempt from its crew, who probably had their own tales of Earth's downfall. Rylan reached out with his mind, feeling the comforting hum of his psychic power, a tingling sensation that buzzed through his skull like static from a broken radio. It was a gift and a curse, much like his leadership of the brigade. "All right, folks," he sent through their shared mental link. "Time to show them what a bad idea it is to corner a pack of Terran psychos." Jax's mental voice was laced with humor. "I prefer misunderstood psychos myself." The battle that followed was a dance of desperation and defiance. The Alliance soldiers poured out of their cruiser like angry ants, their weapons lighting up the forest in deadly fireworks. The brigade responded with a barrage of psychic blasts and sarcastic taunts, the sound of gunfire interspersed with laughter. Rylan ducked a pulse blast, feeling the heat scald his cheek. "You call that shooting?" he yelled. "I've seen better aim from a drunk with a slingshot." Classic motivational speech, Jax quipped, hurling a telekinetic wave that sent a cluster of enemies flying like ragdolls. "They teach it at officer school." Rylan shot back, dodging another blast. As the fight raged, Rylan knew this was just another day in their ongoing nightmare. Humanity had become the universe's favorite punching bag, but as long as he had breath and a sarcastic comment, he'd keep fighting. the Alliance soldiers began to retreat, their courage wilting under the relentless assault of the brigade. Rylan watched, satisfaction mingling with exhaustion. One more round survived, but how many more could they endure? As the mind link hummed with the shared relief of his crew, Rylan felt a tiny glimmer of hope, buried beneath the rubble of reality. Maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to clear humanity's name, or die trying. Well, Rylan said, breathing heavily as he surveyed the battlefield, guest dinner's on me tonight. Jax clapped him on the shoulder, grinning despite the blood and dirt. Only if it's not more rations. I'm starting to grow fond of chewing on crystal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Rylan gathered his weary soldiers, his mind already spinning with the possibilities of tomorrow's challenges. They'd survived the day, but the galaxy was vast and full of enemies. Let's move, he ordered, leading his ragtag team deeper into the forest, ready to face whatever fresh hell awaited them. True to Ventara's form, the night promised to be just as unforgiving as the day, and Rylan wouldn't have it any other way. The Mindwave Brigade's journey into the depths of Ventara's unforgiving crystal wilderness felt like an extended camping trip from hell. Rylan Voss led his ragtag band, the irony of their predicament not lost on him. Here they were, a group of Earth's finest, or at least Earth's survivors, huddling under crystalline trees that looked ready to impale them should the wind blow too hard. How's the view back there, Jax? Rylan asked, sounding more amused than the situation warranted. Jax, bringing up the rear, snorted. Oh, it's just peachy. I'm half expecting to find a brochure saying visit Ventara, your last stop before oblivion. Layla, still fiddling with her latest mechanical masterpiece, or disaster, depending on your perspective, glanced up. At least the brochures would make good kindling. Assuming they'd let us light a fire, Rylan replied, casting a wary glance at the jagged forest around them. The crystalline shards caught the moonlight, casting eerie rainbows across their faces. It was the universe's version of a cruel joke, a beautiful death trap. Their footsteps crunched on the glittering ground, a sound reminiscent of walking on broken glass, which, Rylan mused, was essentially what they were doing. The night air was cold, each breath visible in the dim light, reminding them of the warmth they left behind. Not that they had much warmth to begin with, given the Alliance's hospitality. Anyone miss central heating? Layla asked, her breath fogging as she spoke. I miss not having to worry about being vaporized before breakfast, Jax shot back, his sarcasm undampened by the chill. Hey, if it's any consolation, Rylan added dryly, we probably won't make it to breakfast. Comforting, Jax replied. You should write greeting cards, Rylan chuckled, the sound echoing through the trees, quickly swallowed by the oppressive silence of Ventara. Despite their grim surroundings and even grimmer odds, humor was their shield. Laughter might not stop a bullet, but it kept them sane, or close enough. They moved with the cautious precision of hunted animals, guided by Rylan's instincts and their shared psychic link, a mental tether that allowed them to communicate without a sound. Handy when Alliance drones might be listening. Hours passed without incident, the brigade slipping further into the forest's embrace. The crystalline landscape was a maze, each twist and turn a potential trap. Rylan's mind was a whirl of strategy and paranoia, the two mixing like a particularly volatile cocktail. Every sound, every shadow was an enemy until proven otherwise. As dawn broke, painting the crystal shards in hues of pink and orange, Rylan called a halt. They needed rest, food, and a plan that didn't involve random wandering until the Alliance found them. The brigade settled into a makeshift camp, the ground cold and unforgiving. Their supplies were meager rations that had seen better days and water that tasted of metal. Layla was the first to break the silence, holding up her latest contraption with a proud grin. Say hello to our new best friend. Jax eyed it warily. What does it do, aside from explode? Layla smirked. It's a signal booster. If there's anyone out there who hates the Alliance as much as we do, this might just get their attention. Or lead them right to us, Rylan said, ever the optimist. Same difference, Layla shrugged, her voice light. Besides, if we don't find some help soon, we're toast anyway. Rylan nodded, his expression thoughtful. Desperation and genius often went hand in hand. Do it. But if I end up regretting this, you're giving the eulogy. Layla laughed, her fingers dancing over the device. I'll keep it short and sweet. Here lies Captain Voss. He made bad decisions, but at least he looked good doing it. Jax rolled his eyes. You forgot, and he was a pain in the ass. Rylan grinned, feeling the familiar camaraderie lift his spirits. You're both getting commendations for honesty. As Layla activated the signal booster, Rylan couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point. Either they'd find a new ally, or they'd attract every trigger-happy Alliance soldier in the quadrant. High stakes, but what else was new? The day dragged on, tense and uneventful. The brigade took turns watching the horizon, weapons ready, senses alert. Rylan, seated with his back against a particularly uncomfortable crystal tree, found himself drifting into a half-sleep, his mind replaying memories of Earth. not the diseased wasteland it had become, but the Earth of bright skies and green fields. Now it was little more than a tombstone orbiting the sun. His musings were interrupted by a mental nudge from Jax. "Cap, we've got company." Rylan was on his feet in an instant, pulse pounding. "Alliance?" Jax shook his head. "Not sure, but it's coming in fast." The brigade tensed, readying themselves for whatever came next. A sleek craft, unlike any Alliance ship they'd seen, emerged from the clouds, its design streamlined and almost insect-like. It hovered above them, silent and ominous, before descending with an elegance that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Well," Layla muttered, "either we've found help or we're about to become part of the local scenery." Rylan swallowed, his mind racing. "Let's find out." The craft landed with a soft thud, the door sliding open with a hiss. A figure emerged, humanoid but distinctly alien, with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. The alien surveyed them with an inscrutable expression before speaking in a voice like gravel over glass. "You sent the signal." Rylan stepped forward, his heart in his throat but his voice steady. "Yeah, we're looking for allies. Friends." The alien's eyes seemed to pierce through him, weighing, judging. "Friends are rare in this galaxy, Captain Voss." Rylan's eyebrows shot up. "You know who I am." The alien nodded slowly. "Your reputation precedes you. The Alliance doesn't waste time on nobodies." Jax let out a low whistle. "So, are you here to help us or turn us in?" A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corners of the alien's mouth. "Let's just say the enemy of my enemy can be a useful acquaintance." Layla crossed her arms, unimpressed. "Acquaintance? We were hoping for something more like savior." The alien's gaze flicked to her, amusement glinting in those glowing eyes. "I believe you'll find us accommodating." Rylan felt a flicker of hope. Not much, but enough to cling to. "Then I guess we're in business." The alien nodded, stepping aside to reveal the interior of the craft, sleek and humming with technology beyond anything the brigade had seen. "Welcome aboard. Let's discuss how we might help each other." Rylan followed, his crew close behind. As they entered the alien ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of something massive. A chance to fight back, to clear humanity's name, to survive. The ship's door slid shut behind them with a finality that was both reassuring and terrifying. Outside, Ventara's crystal forest sparkled under the morning sun, indifferent to the struggles of those who walked its paths. Inside, Rylan and his crew prepared to navigate a new set of dangers, trusting that, for once, fortune might just favor the bold and the sarcastically inclined. As the ship lifted off, Rylan allowed himself a rare moment of optimism. "Onward and upward, folks. Let's see if we can't give the universe a run for its money." Jax chuckled, settling into the alien technology with a familiarity that spoke volumes about humanity's adaptability. "Here's hoping whatever we just signed up for isn't worse than what we left behind." Layla, ever the cynic, rolled her eyes. "Come on, Jax. What could possibly go wrong?" Rylan shot her a look. "You realize you just invited disaster, right?" Layla shrugged, unapologetic. "Hey, if it's coming, might as well have a front row seat." The alien, piloting the craft with a grace that belied its bulk, shot them a bemused glance. "You humans are strange creatures." Rylan grinned, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Yeah, but we're the kind of strange that doesn't go down easy." As they soared into the sky, leaving Ventara's glittering death trap behind, Rylan knew the road ahead was long and fraught with danger. But hell, at least they weren't facing it alone, and as far as he was concerned, that was already a win. As the alien craft descended into the dull, smoke-stained sky, Rylan felt the familiar tug of gravity giving way to the smooth hum of anti-grav thrusters. He glanced back at Layla and Jax, their faces etched with anticipation and a hint of nausea. "First time hitching a ride with a rock-skinned Uber driver," he quipped, attempting to lighten the mood. Jax snorted, leaning against a sleek console that looked about as user-friendly as an alien tax return. "Feels like I'm in a dentist's chair. Only instead of drilling my teeth, I'm expecting to get drilled by Alliance lasers." "Well, at least it's not our first time getting screwed," Layla added, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar technology with a mix of awe and apprehension. "I just hope this one buys us a drink first." Their alien pilot, Thaura, shot them a sideways glance, her expression unreadable but likely exasperated. "I assure you, the situation isn't quite what you imagine. You're not prisoners here." "Oh, we're free-range humans then." Rylan couldn't help but jab. "Nice to know we're not just the special of the day." Thaura's stony features didn't so much as twitch. "I have information that could change everything for your species, Captain, but I require something in return." Rylan raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, you want us to babysit your pets or water your plants?" "Not quite," Thaura replied, her voice like gravel dragged over a synthboard. "My people are facing extinction. The same plague that ruined Earth is spreading through our worlds." Layla leaned forward, her interest piqued. "And you think we can help because, what, we've got experience dying from it?" You humans have a unique resistance. Something in your genetic makeup shields you from the worst effects, Thaura explained, steering the ship with fluid ease. We need your help to create a cure. Rylan's brow furrowed. So a little tit for tat, help us clear our name and we give you a crash course in not dying. Thaura nodded, her glowing eyes never leaving the controls. Precisely. Cooperation could mean salvation for both our species. Jax let out a low whistle. That's one hell of a swap. Either we save an alien race or we end up as lab rats. Look on the bright side, Rylan said, feigning optimism. If we fail, we won't be around to hear their I told you so's. Thaura guided the ship into a descent, the view outside shifting from endless stars to the bustling sprawl of a space station, an architectural nightmare of tiers and glowing conduits, all orbiting a planet that seemed to be more industrial complex than habitable world. Welcome to Station Obsidia, Thaura announced as they docked with a soft shudder. It's as safe as you can get without being buried under Alliance paperwork. Rylan peered out at the grimy, neon-lit platforms. So this is where the magic happens, is it? Looks more like the kind of place you'd trade a kidney for a hot meal. Let's hope we don't have to, Jax said, peering into the shadows with a wary eye. The ramp lowered with a metallic groan, and Rylan led the way out. The air was thick with the aroma of recycled oxygen and desperation, a bouquet that seemed to cling to everything in the station. A motley crew of aliens and humans bustled about, each more suspicious-looking than the last. Rylan's instincts prickled, the kind of feeling that preceded a bar fight or an unexpected visit from the in-laws. Thaura motioned them toward a series of corridors, her stride purposeful. We have a lab where we can begin work immediately. Time is not a luxury we possess. Story of our lives, Layla muttered, falling in step with a wary glance at the crowd. Always the bridesmaids, never the ones with the cure to galactic plagues. The lab was a sterile expanse of glass and chrome, every surface gleaming with the cold promise of scientific progress. Rylan half expected a mad scientist to pop out and start monologuing about world domination. Here we are, Thaura said, gesturing at the equipment. Our specialists will work with you to analyze what makes your immune systems unique. Jax raised an eyebrow. And if we don't like the results, Thaura's eyes narrowed, though not unkindly. I assure you, failure is not an option any of us can afford. Well, on that cheerful note, Rylan said, clapping his hands together. Let's play doctor. The lab techs, a mix of species that looked like the casting call for a sci-fi horror flick, got to work. Needles, scanners, and devices that whirred ominously were deployed, much to the dismay of Jax, who had a known aversion to anything sharper than his wit. Layla, though, was in her element. She tinkered with one of the machines, eyes alight with curiosity. You know, if we weren't on the brink of extinction, this might actually be fun. There's always a silver lining, Rylan said dryly, wincing as a particularly large needle approached. Even if it's just the lining of your casket. Ayers turned into days, the lab a blur of activity. The brigade found themselves prodded, poked, and questioned endlessly. Layla had taken it upon herself to help where she could, her knack for mechanics a welcome surprise to the alien techs. Meanwhile, Rylan found himself sinking into the kind of weariness that clung to the bones. The station's grim atmosphere did nothing to alleviate the feeling of impending doom that shadowed his thoughts. Finally, Thaura called them to a meeting in a small conference room, its walls adorned with what Rylan guessed were motivational posters. Either that or the alien equivalent of "hang in there, baby. We've made progress," Thaura announced, her voice betraying a hint of excitement. Your genetic material contains a protein we believe can counteract the plague. Jax perked up, looking as if he'd just been told the bar was open. So we're not just pretty faces after all. Quite the opposite, Thaura replied, a rare smile touching her lips. You may be the key to saving millions. Rylan crossed his arms, skeptical. And what about the evidence you promised? The stuff that could exonerate humanity. Thaura turned serious, her expression grave. We have a record, a transmission from the Alliance's high command, discussing how they plan to scapegoat Earth to divert attention from their own lack of preparedness. Rylan felt a mix of anger and vindication. So they knew they were throwing us to the wolves. Yes, and releasing this data would expose their deceit, potentially swaying public opinion in your favor, Thaura said. Layla shook her head, her voice laced with irony. From galactic pariahs to tragic heroes. Ain't life a peach? What's the catch? Jax asked, ever the skeptic. Thaura hesitated, a shadow passing over her features. If we go public with this, the Alliance will retaliate. They'll stop at nothing to destroy Obsidia and anyone connected to us. Rylan sighed, running a hand through his hair. So we help you cure this plague, and you help clear our names, but we risk painting targets on all our backs in the process. Exactly, Thaura confirmed, her gaze steady. The decision is yours, but remember, the stakes affect more than just your crew. Rylan nodded, the weight of the universe pressing heavy on his shoulders. He exchanged a look with Layla and Jax, their expressions a mirror of the conflict brewing within him. They were survivors, yes, but they'd never been ones to turn their backs on a fight worth having. Well then, Rylan said, a grim smile spreading across his face. Looks like we're going to war. Layla grinned, her eyes alight with a familiar fire. About time things got interesting. Jax groaned, though there was no mistaking the resolve in his voice. And here I was hoping for a quiet life. Quiet's never been our style, Rylan replied, a steely determination settling in his gut. We're going to give the Alliance a run for their money. And maybe, just maybe, we'll save a few lives along the way. As they left the conference room, the weight of their decision hanging between them, Rylan couldn't help but feel a spark of hope ignite within him. It was a dangerous path they were on, fraught with peril and uncertainty. But hell, if they were going down, they were damn well going to take a few bastards with them. The air in Station Obsidia was thick with tension, a cocktail of anxiety and recycled oxygen that seemed to cling to the skin like a bad suit. Rylan led the Mindwave Brigade through the bustling corridors, eyes darting around like a paranoid ferret. It wasn't paranoia if they really were out to get you, after all. Remind me again why we're trusting the alien equivalent of a used car salesman, Jax muttered, falling in step behind Rylan. His eyes flicked nervously towards a group of aliens who looked like they'd happily gut them for a spare credit chip. Because we're desperate and they have the goods, Rylan replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. And because nobody else is lining up to save our skins. Layla was already fiddling with a device she'd swiped from the lab, her fingers working with the finesse of a pickpocket. Let's just hope this doesn't end with us as test subjects in some Alliance lab. Hey, maybe they need a human piñata, Jax quipped. I'm sure we'd be a hit, Rylan smirked. Always knew you'd go out with a bang, Jax. The mood was light, but the reality was far from it. The Alliance wasn't just a shadow, it was a storm cloud on the horizon, rumbling with the promise of hellfire and destruction. And they were in the eye of it, with Thaura's promise of salvation hanging like a carrot on a stick. As they rounded a corner, Rylan felt an itch between his shoulder blades, the kind you get right before things go sideways. And sure enough, things went sideways faster than a greased weasel on a slip-end slide. They were cornered at the mouth of a side corridor by a group of figures. At their head was Drail, a member of the brigade who had all the charm of a hangnail and about as much loyalty as a cat with a new owner. Drail, Rylan said, his voice a dry crackle. Decided to show your face again, huh? I thought you'd crawled into a hole somewhere. Drail's grin was oily, like the kind of smile you'd see on a politician before an election. Captain, fancy meeting you here. I have to say I'm surprised you didn't see this coming. What's this? Jax asked, his hand hovering near his blaster, fingers itching for a fight. Insurance, Drail said, his eyes gleaming with the kind of madness that usually preceded a bad idea. The Alliance is offering a hefty price for your heads, and I plan on collecting. Rylan's gaze flicked to Layla, who gave a barely perceptible nod. A plan was already forming. You always did lack imagination, Drail, selling us out for credits. Thought you'd aim higher. Don't need to aim that high when you've got a bounty that can buy your own moon, Drail replied, gesturing for his goons to close in. Rylan sighed dramatically, spreading his hands. All this fuss over little old me, I'm flattered. Let's cut the crap, Voss, Drail snapped. You've got two choices, come quietly or, well, you know the drill. Let me guess, Jax chimed in. The drill involves us getting shot and you getting a promotion. Something like that, Drail admitted. Layla rolled her eyes, slipping the device she'd been tinkering with behind her back. You always did have a talent for making friends, Drail. Drail's grin widened, and Rylan felt a pang of regret for not airlocking the bastard when he had the chance. Enough talk. Time to get paid. Funny thing about payments, Rylan said, a wry smile creeping onto his lips. They're only worth something if you're around to spend them. With a flick of his wrist, Layla activated the device, sending a high-pitched whine through the corridor. Their attackers winced, clutching their ears, and Rylan seized the moment, lunging forward with Jax right behind him. The corridor erupted into chaos, a blur of fists, blaster fire, and shouted curses that echoed in the confined space. Rylan ducked and weaved, his movements instinctual, honed by years of dodging trouble and making more of it. Layla was a whirlwind of motion, her makeshift weapon disorienting their foes long enough for Jax to deliver a bone-crunching blow to one of Drail's lackeys. You know, I always thought we could settle this like civilized beings, Rylan grunted, grappling with Drail, who fought back with the desperation of a man seeing his payday slip away. But then I remembered who I was dealing with. Drail snarled, trying to break Rylan's hold, but the captain had always been a stubborn son of a bitch. This isn't over, Voss. It never is, Rylan replied, slamming Drail against the wall with a satisfying crunch. Jax dispatched the last of the goons with a swift kick, sending the alien sprawling. Well, that was fun. Let's never do it again. Layla dusted herself off, her expression smug. See, this is why you keep an engineer around. We know how to short-circuit a bad time. Rylan nodded, catching his breath. Not bad, Layla. Remind me to never piss you off. The corridor was a mess, littered with groaning bodies that Rylan didn't spare a second glance. They had bigger fish to fry, and the oil was already smoking. We've got to move, Rylan said, urgency threading through his voice. Drail got one thing right. The Alliance won't give up that easy. Then let's not stick around to roll out the welcome mat, Jax agreed, already moving. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the station, weaving through crowds and ducking past patrols. The station, for all its grime and grit, was a maze of opportunity and danger, and Rylan couldn't help but appreciate the irony. It was exactly the kind of place that could save them or bury them. Finally, they reached the hangar bays, the vast space echoing with the clangs and whirs of machinery. Thaura was waiting by the alien craft, her expression unreadable as always. You encountered difficulty, Thaura asked, eyeing the disheveled state of the brigade. Just a minor hiccup, Rylan replied, brushing off the altercation as if it were a mere inconvenience. Seems like the welcoming committee lost our reservation. Thaura inclined her head, acknowledging the unspoken threat. We must proceed with haste. The Alliance's presence is growing, and time is not our ally. Time's never been on our side, Layla said with a shrug. But that's never stopped us before. The alien craft loomed before them, its sleek design a stark contrast to the industrial chaos of the hangar. Rylan took a breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. They were about to step into the fire, and there was no turning back. As they boarded the ship, Jax cast a wary glance back at the station. Think we'll make it out of this one, boss? Rylan considered the question, weighing their odds against the rising tide of Alliance forces and internal betrayal. I think we've got a fighting chance. And that's all we've ever needed. The ship's engines hummed to life, the anti-grav thrusters lifting them smoothly away from the station. The view from the cockpit was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, the vastness of space a reminder of their insignificance and their determination to defy it. As they soared into the stars, Rylan couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. It was a dangerous feeling, but one he'd learned to nurture. After all, it was hope that had brought them this far, and hope, despite the odds, was a currency he was willing to trade. All right, Thaura, Rylan said, settling into the captain's chair. Let's see if we can pull off the impossible. The alien pilot nodded, her expression softening ever so slightly. Together, perhaps we can. Together. It was a word that carried weight, a promise of alliance in a universe that seemed hell-bent on tearing them apart. And it was a promise Rylan intended to keep, come hell or high laser fire. Just another day in paradise, Jax muttered, leaning back in his seat. Layla laughed, the sound bright in the confines of the craft. Yeah, and tomorrow we'll deal with the hangover. The ship surged forward, cutting through the dark like a knife through butter, and Rylan let himself believe, just for a moment, that they might actually make it. Because out here, in the cold vastness of space, belief was as good a weapon as any, and they were armed to the teeth. The alien craft slipped through space with a smoothness that felt almost obscene, given the chaos that usually accompanied the Mindwave Brigade. Rylan Voss sat in the captain's chair, staring out at the endless void with a sense of foreboding. For once, they had a plan that didn't involve running and gunning like a headless chicken. They were going to hit an Alliance outpost and access a crucial data terminal. Of course, the plan was about as risky as juggling grenades, but when had that ever stopped them? How's the armory looking, Layla? Rylan asked, trying not to sound like he was asking about her favorite soap opera. Locked, loaded, and liable to explode if you sneeze too hard, Layla replied from the back of the cockpit, not even glancing up from her console. She was fiddling with yet another device, probably something that could either save them or blow them to kingdom come. Like my high school science projects, only with less glitter. Jax snorted, leaning against the wall with an air of casual indifference that was belied by the way his fingers kept twitching near his blaster. I don't know about you, but I can't wait to become intimately acquainted with the business end of an Alliance turret. Always a silver lining with you, Rylan noted dryly, but try to keep your head down. I hear they make terrible souvenirs. Thaura, their alien pilot, cut in with her usual deadpan delivery, approaching the target. The Alliance's defenses are as formidable as expected. There will be no margin for error. Good thing we thrive on errors, Rylan muttered, checking the readouts. Prepare for insertion. And by insertion, I mean the kind where we don't get skewered by laser fire. Drail, who'd been lurking at the back like a bad smell that wouldn't fade, sauntered forward. You sure this is a good idea, Captain? You know, just because a plan is insane doesn't mean it's brilliant. Rylan gave him a sidelong glance. Says the man who tried to sell us out for quick credit. Tell me, Drail, how is it you still have teeth? Drail grinned, showing off said teeth. Charm, mostly. Enough, Rylan said, cutting off the banter before it ate up their precious time. We hit the outpost, grab the data, and get out. Easy as robbing a bank. Only with more lasers and fewer getaway cars. The ship slid into position above the outpost, the anti-grav thrusters humming like a lullaby of impending doom. Ryland's gut churned, not from fear, but from the nagging sense of inevitability that seemed to accompany their every move. He pushed it aside. They were committed now. The outpost was a squat, ugly beast of a building, all harsh angles and glaring lights. The kind of place that screamed, "You really shouldn't be here," in neon letters. Rylan and the brigade slipped down a maintenance shaft, the kind that was as tight as an accountant's wallet and about as welcoming. Layla was in the lead, peering around corners like she was expecting to find a surprise party. "Clear," she whispered, signaling them forward. "Clear," Rylan echoed, though he felt anything but. Every step sounded like a gunshot in the eerie silence of the place, and he could almost feel the Alliance's eyes watching them from the walls. Jax lagged behind, his movements a study in calculated laziness. "Remind me again why we didn't just blow the whole thing up." "Because we need the data, genius," Layla hissed, rolling her eyes. "The Alliance has proof that humans aren't responsible for the plague, remember? Or did you forget that little detail in the mess of your hair?" Jax ran a hand through his chaotic locks, flashing a grin. "Hey, this is all natural panic." Drayle coughed, a sound like a rusty engine turning over. "Let's hope the Alliance has a soft spot for nostalgia, then. Less talk, more movement," Rylan ordered, pressing forward. The corridors were a maze, each turn more labyrinthine than the last. It felt like they were descending into the belly of a beast, and Rylan had no illusions about their chances if things went south. At last, they reached the control room, a cavernous space filled with blinking lights and humming consoles. Rylan almost breathed a sigh of relief, but that would be tempting fate, and fate was already giving him the stink eye. Layla dashed to the nearest terminal, fingers flying like she'd been born with a keyboard in hand. "Give me a minute. I just need to bypass the security. Just don't breathe too loudly." Rylan nodded, though his attention was on the doors they'd come through. The silence was oppressive, like the moment before a storm, and he'd never trusted silence. "Jax, keep an eye out. Drayle, don't touch anything." Jax saluted lazily while Drayle merely shrugged. "Wouldn't dream of it." The minutes dragged like years, every tick of the clock a death knell in disguise. Rylan's nerves were wound tighter than a guitar string, and every sound seemed magnified. Layla's typing, Jax's breathing, his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. And then, as if the universe had decided it was bored with waiting, things went sideways faster than a cat on a hot tin roof. The alarms blared, a cacophony of sound that shattered the quiet like a sledgehammer. "Aw, nuts," Layla muttered, her fingers still dancing across the keys. "They've locked us out of the system, must have tripped something. Trips are for vacations, not suicide runs," Jax quipped, eyes darting to the entrance as shadows loomed. "Get those doors sealed," Rylan barked, adrenaline spiking. The room was suddenly a flurry of motion as everyone scrambled to secure their position. But it was too late. The first wave of Alliance soldiers poured in like a tide of bad intentions. The fight was brutal and immediate. Blaster fire lit up the space in a deadly strobe, bullets of energy that sliced the air with lethal precision. Rylan ducked behind a console, snapping off shots and watching as the soldiers advanced with the grim determination of a hangman. Jax was a whirlwind of motion, weaving through the chaos with the agility of a dancer on speed. His blaster sang in his hand, each shot finding its mark with the kind of precision that made Rylan wonder why he wasn't a professional gambler. Drayle, despite his earlier bravado, was quick to find cover, his shots as erratic as his loyalty. "Any brilliant ideas, Captain?" he shouted over the din, a note of desperation edging his voice. "Working on it," Rylan shouted back, ducking as a bolt of energy scorched the air above his head. He glanced at Layla, who was still frantically typing away, trying to salvage their mission from the jaws of disaster. "Almost there," Layla said through gritted teeth, her focus unbroken even as the world exploded around her. But the odds were against them. There were just too many soldiers, too much firepower, and not enough of them to hold the line. The room was a maelstrom of violence, and Rylan felt the familiar chill of despair creeping in. "Captain, we've got company," Jax warned, his voice strained as he ducked behind a console, reloading with practiced ease. "And not the good kind." Rylan glanced up to see more soldiers flooding into the room, their numbers a tsunami of inevitability. The odds were shifting from bad to worse, and he knew they were in a world of trouble. "Layla, we need that data now," he shouted, desperation clawing at his voice. "Buy me 2 minutes," she yelled back, her fingers a blur of motion. 2 minutes, Rylan muttered, firing off another shot. Might as well be 2 years. The fight dragged on, each second stretching into eternity. They were holding their ground, but barely. For every soldier they dropped, another 2 took their place, a relentless wave that showed no sign of stopping. "Rylan, we can't keep this up," Jax called, his voice tight with strain. "We're gonna get overrun, not if I can help it," Rylan replied, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. He was running on fumes, his energy spent, his resolve fraying at the edges. This was supposed to be their chance, their shot at proving humanity's innocence in the plague that had ravaged the galaxy. but the Alliance was a relentless machine, and they were just gnats in the gears. And then with a triumphant cry, Layla hit a final key and the console beeped in approval. Got it, data transfer complete. Great, Ryland said, feeling a flicker of hope. Now let's get the hell out of here. Easier said than done, Drayle muttered, peering over the console. The soldiers were regrouping, their numbers reinforced, and Ryland knew they had to move or die. Layla, get that door open, Ryland ordered, the urgency in his voice a sharp contrast to his usual sarcasm. I'm on it, she replied, already working her magic on the control panel. Jax, ever the optimist, grinned even as he reloaded once more. At least we know they can't shoot for shit. Small mercies, Ryland replied, his sarcastic humor a thin veneer over the mounting pressure. The door slid open with a reluctant groan, and Ryland didn't wait for an invitation. Go, 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 he barked, covering their retreat with a barrage of fire. They fled down the corridors, the sounds of pursuit hot on their heels. Ryland's mind was a blur of calculations and possibilities, each one as grim as the last. They'd gotten the data, but it wouldn't mean a damn thing if they didn't make it out alive. The maze of hallways twisted and turned, and Ryland led them down a route he hoped would avoid the worst of the Alliance's forces. But hope was a fickle mistress, and as they rounded a corner, they ran headlong into another group of soldiers. Well, this is cozy, Jax quipped, raising his blaster with a weary smile. Ryland grunted, pushing past his exhaustion. There was no time for doubt, no room for hesitation. They had to fight or fall, and Ryland wasn't planning on lying down just yet. The battle was a blur, a chaotic dance of survival. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought like demons, each moment a testament to their refusal to go quietly into that dark night. But even the fiercest fires burn out, and Ryland felt his strength waning, his resolve slipping. This was their darkest hour, and it felt like the universe itself was conspiring to snuff them out. Captain, Layla shouted, her voice cutting through the din like a lifeline. We need to move now, Ryland nodded, his decision made. Fall back, we're getting out of here. They retreated under a hail of fire, their steps heavy with fatigue and the weight of what they were leaving behind. The Alliance might have the upper hand, but the brigade had something they couldn't match, a stubborn refusal to die. They reached the maintenance shaft, scrambling up with a speed born of desperation. The Alliance was hot on their heels, their shouts a chorus of impending doom. Ryland was the last to climb, pausing at the base to fire a few parting shots before hauling himself upwards. His muscles screamed in protest, his body a riot of exhaustion and adrenaline, but he pushed through, driven by the need to see them all safely away. The ship was waiting, Thowras piloting a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. They tumbled inside, breathless and battered but alive. Ryland slumped into the captain's chair, his body a symphony of aches and pains. Punch it, Thowra. Get us out of here, the alien nodded, her expression as stony as ever as she guided the ship away from the outpost. The engines roared to life, propelling them forward, away from the jaws of defeat. As they soared back into the quiet of space, Ryland took a moment to catch his breath, his mind a whirl of thoughts and emotions. They'd escaped against all odds, but the battle was far from over. The Alliance was still a looming threat, and their fight for humanity's innocence was just beginning. Jax leaned back, his face a mask of tired triumph. Well, that was fun. Who's up for round two? Layla laughed, a sound of pure relief. Let's not. I think I've had enough excitement for one day. Ryland closed his eyes, the weight of their mission settling over him like a heavy cloak. They'd faced the abyss and lived to tell the tale, but he knew their journey was far from over. The galaxy was a cruel mistress, and the Mindwave Brigade limped back into the ship battered, breathing heavily, and generally looking like they'd just gotten back from a day at the galaxy's worst amusement park. Thowra didn't bat an alien eyelid as she navigated them away from the frying pan and into the fire, otherwise known as the vast, indifferent expanse of space. In the chaos of their recent escape, an idea had started niggling at the back of Ryland's mind, but it itched like a rash he couldn't quite scratch. Nice work, team, Ryland said, settling into his captain's chair with all the grace of a sack of potatoes. I'd suggest a group hug, but I doubt we're at that stage in our relationship. Jax wiped a smear of what was hopefully just scorch marks off his forehead. Speak for yourself, Captain. I've grown quite attached to these near-death experiences. Layla finished checking her equipment, offering a half smile. Maybe next time, we can try a vacation on a nice, deserted planet. You know, somewhere the locals aren't shooting at us. Where's the fun in that? Drayle added, still looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I live for this kind of excitement. It's just a shame the excitement wants us dead. Thowra glanced back from the pilot's seat, her voice as flat as ever. If you're done with the pleasantries, we've got a bigger issue, that data you risked your lives for. It might not be the whole story. Ryland suppressed a sigh. Fantastic, just when I thought life couldn't get any more complicated. Layla looked up, curiosity piqued. What do you mean, Thowra? What's missing from the data? More like what's been added, Thowra replied, her tone as deadpan as ever. The plague isn't just an accident. It was engineered. Silence fell like a lead weight, the crew digesting this bombshell with all the grace of a mule at a science fair. Jax broke the silence with a low whistle. So, someone out there decided to play God, and we got the short end of the stick. Rylan rubbed his temples, feeling a headache brewing. And here I thought the Alliance just hated us for our sunny dispositions. Why didn't you say something sooner? Drail asked, suspicion in his voice. This seems like the kind of tidbit you'd want to share before we risked our necks. Thaura shrugged, the motion almost human. You needed to focus on getting the data first. Now we have a new puzzle piece. The question is, who has the rest? Rylan leaned forward, the itch in his brain growing more insistent. We need to find out who's behind this and what their endgame is. If we can prove humanity was set up, maybe we can turn this mess around. Jax raised an eyebrow. Seems like a tall order, Captain. We're not exactly flush with friends right now. Then we make new ones, Rylan said, a spark of determination lighting his eyes. The data's a start, but if we want to clear our names, we're going to need more than just proof. We're going to need allies. Layla's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. And how do we do that? It's not like we can just waltz up to the Alliance and ask for chat over space coffee. No, Rylan agreed, a smirk playing at his lips. But we can start by making a little noise in a place they'll definitely notice. Drail groaned. This isn't about to get us killed, is it? Probably, Rylan conceded. But isn't that half the fun? Thaura checked the ship's diagnostics, her expression unreadable. Just tell me where to point the ship, and I'll get us there. Rylan stood, the weight of the universe on his shoulders, but oddly light. First stop, Ventara. There's something I need to try, and it's about time we tested just how resilient humans can be. The crew exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from skeptical to resigned. After all, they'd followed him this far. What was one more brush with certain death? As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Rylan couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was standing at the edge of something much bigger than any of them. The crystal forests of Ventara awaited them, and with it, the chance for a revelation or a reckoning. Ventara wasn't known for its hospitality, but then again, neither were the Mindwave Brigade. The crystalline trees jutted up like nature's own set of daggers, glistening under a sun that seemed to shine with malicious intent. If the Alliance had any brains, they'd have avoided the place entirely. Of course, that meant it was the perfect spot for Rylan's audacious plan. Welcome to Ventara, Rylan announced as they disembarked, the air thick with the dust of alien minerals. Home of shiny trees, sharp rocks, and potentially our salvation. Feels like a homecoming, Jax said, kicking at the ground with a boot. I'm already feeling welcome. Layla adjusted her pack, her arsenal of explosives clinking ominously. Just tell me where you want the fireworks, Captain. Not yet, Rylan replied, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. First, we need to find the heart of this place. I have a hunch it might just surprise us. Drail looked skeptical. You're leading us on a mystery tour based on a hunch. That's comforting. Rylan grinned despite himself. Comfort's overrated, Drail. Besides, I've got a trick up my sleeve. They trudged through the forest, the ground crunching beneath their feet with each step. The crystalline spires loomed around them like frozen screams of some tortured land. Rylan's mind was a whirl of possibilities, each one more insane than the last. They came to a clearing where the crystals formed a perfect circle, their surfaces smooth and reflective. Rylan felt a pull here, an instinct more than anything else. It was time to tap into that hidden well of potential Thaura had hinted at. What's the plan, Rylan? Jax asked, surveying the area with a soldier's eye for detail. Rylan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. I'm going to try something risky, something that might just backfire spectacularly, but if it doesn't, we might have a way to rally some allies. Layla folded her arms, intrigued despite herself. And this involves psychic potential, Rylan said, the words feeling strange on his tongue. Thaura, back me up here. The alien nodded, her expression unreadable. The Mindwave Brigade were always more than just survivors. Rylan has a unique ability to channel psychic energy. Here, in this place, it might be enough to reach out and touch others like us. Drail snorted. So you're saying we're about to conduct a séance in a crystal forest, and the guy leading it isn't even sure he can do it? Pretty much, Rylan agreed, a wry smile tugging at his lips. But if it works, we'll have a network of psychics who can help us spread the truth. And if it doesn't, Jax asked, his tone familiar and teasing, then we'll probably end up as a cautionary tale for future generations, Rylan replied, shrugging. But hey, it's worth a shot. They formed a loose circle around Rylan, who closed his eyes and focused on the crystal spires around him. The air grew thick, charged with a palpable tension that buzzed like a swarm of angry bees. Slowly, Rylan reached out with his mind, seeking that elusive spark that would ignite the connection he needed. At first, there was nothing but silence, a vast emptiness that seemed to mock his efforts. But then, like a distant whisper, he felt a presence, a flicker at the edge of his consciousness. It was weak, but it was there. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he pushed harder, drawing on reserves he didn't know he had. The presence grew stronger, closer, until it was as if he was reaching out to touch a flame that danced just out of reach. In that moment, something shifted. The crystals around them thrummed with energy, vibrating in resonance with the power Rylan was channeling. It was as if they were amplifying his psychic call, sending it out across the stars to others like him. Got something? Rylan ground out through gritted teeth. Feels like others. Jax's voice was barely a whisper. Bloody hell, he's actually doing it. Layla leaned in, her gaze fixed on the crystals. Can you reach them, Rylan? Can you make contact? Rylan felt the connection stabilizing, a thread of unity weaving its way through the cosmos. Yes, he breathed, his voice a mix of wonder and awe. I can feel them. They're out there listening. He sent out a message, a plea for help, a call to arms for anyone who could hear him. It was a gamble, a shot in the dark, but it was all they had. Slowly, the tension in the air began to dissipate as Rylan eased back, the connection maintained but no longer a strain. He opened his eyes, meeting the expectant gazes of his crew. Well, Layla asked, her voice a mix of hope and skepticism. Rylan smiled, feeling the weight of possibility settling over him. We're not alone, and if we play our cards right, neither is humanity. Drayle let out a low whistle. Guess that seance wasn't such a bad idea after all. Jax clapped a hand on Rylan's shoulder, grinning. Looks like you might just pull this off, Captain. Who knew you had a psychic side? Thaura watched with her usual calm, a hint of approval in her eyes. This changes the game. We have allies now, but it's up to us to use this wisely. Rylan nodded, his mind already racing with plans and strategies. They had a new weapon in their arsenal, one that could tip the scales in their favor, but it was a fragile hope, one that needed careful handling. Let's get back to the ship, Rylan said, the fire of determination burning bright within him. We've got a galaxy to save, and I'd hate to keep them waiting. As they made their way back to the ship, Rylan couldn't help but feel a surge of optimism. It was a rare thing in their line of work, and he intended to savor it. Whatever came next, they were ready for it. Together, they would face the dark and fight for their place among the stars. The ship hummed with a sense of urgency as it sliced through space, a silver bullet of defiance against the cosmos. Captain Rylan Voss was back in the captain's chair, which felt slightly more comfortable now that he had allies, albeit invisible psychic ones. His crew was scattered around him, each member a mix of nerves and gallows humor. Drayle slouched in his seat, arms crossed and a smirk playing on his lips. So, the plan is to fly straight into the lion's den and convince them we're the good guys. It's almost like you want to lose that bounty on your head, Captain. Rylan tilted his chair back precariously, balancing on the edge as he loved to do. More like show them who's got the bigger stick. Besides, what's life without a little drama? Longer, Thaura said, her voice deadpan as ever. She fiddled with the ship's controls, her alien fingers moving with practiced precision. But then we'd miss out on all these delightful near-death experiences. Jax was busy checking his blasters, which were arranged on the table with the care and precision of a man who loved his tools. I say bring it on. I was getting bored anyway. What's a life without a few laser burns and scorch marks, right? Besides, scars are sexy. Layla glanced at him, unimpressed. You keep telling yourself that, Jax. In the meantime, I've prepped enough explosives to make fireworks look like a candlelit dinner. When I light these babies, they'll definitely notice us. Rylan grinned. That's the spirit. Let's give the Alliance a front row seat to the greatest show in the galaxy. The alien craft moved with smooth efficiency, courtesy of the anti-grav thrusters that seemed to sneer at gravity's limitations. Station Obsidia loomed ahead, a monolith of metal and ambition floating in the black. It was the kind of place that had seen more bloodshed than a gladiator's arena and still smelled better than Drayle's boots after a long mission. The comms crackled to life, the voice of an Alliance officer coming through with all the warmth of a tax collector. Unidentified vessel, state your business or be prepared to be fired upon. Rylan activated the comms, his voice dripping with charm and sarcasm. This is Captain Rylan Voss of the Mindwave Brigade, here to deliver a special message. We've got something that might interest your bosses, something about a little engineered plague. There was a pause on the other end, just long enough for Rylan to imagine the officer choking on his coffee. Hold position. We're assessing your request. Sure thing, Rylan replied, kicking back. Take your time, but fair warning, patience isn't one of my strong suits. The line went dead, and Rylan looked over at his crew, who wore expressions ranging from amused to downright skeptical. Well, that couldn't have gone better, or worse, Drayle muttered. Depends on who's shooting first. The ship's sensors beeped with a warning, and Thaura raised an eyebrow. Looks like they're rolling out the welcome mat. 2 cruisers are heading our way. I suggest we prepare for a less-than-friendly reception. Jax grinned, checking his weapons one last time. I was hoping for a warm welcome. Layla cracked her knuckles, her explosives ready for action. Let's make sure they know we're here for more than just the free drinks. The cruisers closed in sleek predatory shapes against the void. Rylan steeled himself, the weight of the universe pressing down on his shoulders. But there was also a fire in his gut, a burning resolve to see this through. All right, everyone, showtime. Let's give them the best damn performance they've ever seen. The alien craft spun into action, its anti-grav thrusters lighting up like a cosmic ballet. Thaura weaved through the cruiser's fire with the calm of someone swatting flies at a picnic. The rest of the crew strapped in for the ride, ready to play their parts. Explosions bloomed in the dark like deadly flowers, Layla's handiwork creating a dazzling display of chaos. Jax's blasters sang their song of destruction, each shot precise and met with a smirk of satisfaction. Drail manned the console, hacking into the Alliance systems with fingers that moved like lightning. "We're in," Drail shouted over the din. "Accessing their data now. Let's see how they like a little truth bomb." Rylan felt the thrill of the moment, the rush of adrenaline and insanity. This was what they lived for, a chance to change the game, to turn the tide of a war that no one asked for but everyone was forced to fight. The cruiser's comms lit up again, the officer's voice now edged with panic. "What the hell are you doing? Cease fire or you'll what?" Rylan cut in, a manic grin on his face. "We've got your data and we're about to broadcast it to every corner of the galaxy. You want the universe to know your dirty little secret." There was a beat of silence, a pregnant pause filled with tension and fear. Then, as if the cosmos itself had taken a breath, the firing stopped. Rylan gestured to Drail, who nodded and executed the final command. Across the galaxy, on countless screens and devices, the truth began to unfurl. A story of betrayal, of a plague engineered to wipe out a species, of a conspiracy that had nearly doomed humanity. The gravitas of the revelation was immense, but here, amidst the danger and the chaos, it felt like a victory. A small one, but a victory nonetheless. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the comms buzzed again, the officer's tone now one of resignation. "Captain Voss, you've made your point. Stand down and we'll discuss terms." Rylan leaned back, the weight of his actions settling over him like a shroud. "Terms, huh? All right. How about you start by taking that bounty off my head?" Jax snorted, incapable of holding back. "And maybe an apology. I think we deserve at least that much." Layla chimed in, her voice full of mischief. "And a fruit basket. I've always wanted one of those." The officer sighed, the sound of a man defeated by bureaucracy and circumstance. "Fine, we'll see what we can do." Rylan exchanged a look with his crew, each of them grinning like madmen. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for now they had their moment. "Get us out of here, Thaura," Rylan ordered. "We've done enough damage for one day." The alien craft pulled away, leaving the cruisers in the chaos in its wake. The weight of their actions lingered, a heavy reminder of the path they'd chosen. "Where to now, Captain?" Jax asked, the thrill of victory still bright in his eyes. Rylan considered the question, the possibilities stretching out before him like a map of the stars. "Anywhere but here. Let's keep them guessing." Layla nodded, her explosives packed away for another day. "And maybe find a place that's got actual sunlight. I'm tired of these artificial skies." Drail chuckled, the sound rich and full of life. "And a shower. I think we could all use one of those." Thaura piloted the ship with her usual grace, setting a course for the unknown. The galaxy was wide, full of danger and opportunity, and for the first time in a long time, Rylan felt like it was theirs for the taking. As the stars blurred by, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They'd faced the darkness and emerged with something more than survival. They had hope, and in the grim corridors of space, that was the most powerful weapon of all. The crew settled in, the hum of the ship a comforting constant beneath them. They were still fugitives, still hunted by a universe that didn't understand them. But together they were a force to be reckoned with, a brigade of misfits bound by more than just circumstance. The silence stretched out, the calm before the next storm. But for now, Rylan was content. They'd made their stand, spoken their truth, and in the end, that was enough. As he leaned back in his chair, Rylan couldn't help but smile. The future was uncertain, the path ahead fraught with peril, but with his crew by his side, he knew they could face whatever came next. Together, they would fight for their place among the stars, one battle at a time. The ride back to Earth was smoother than Rylan would have liked. He found comfort in chaos, like a warm blanket on a cold night. If the ship wasn't groaning and threatening to tear itself apart, something felt off. But today, the alien craft purred like a kitten that had just eaten all the canaries in the galaxy. Drail lounged in his seat, feet propped up on the console. "So, Captain, what's the plan once we hit dirt? We gonna bask in our newfound celebrity status, or just keep running like we always do? Got any better suggestions?" Rylan replied, glancing out at the stars sliding by. "Maybe we should just declare a galactic holiday and call it a day." Thaura snorted, a rare display of amusement. "I'm sure the Alliance would just love that. A day where everyone sits around, contemplating their failures. Or," Jax added, polishing his blasters with a rag that had seen better days, "we could stage a parade. I've got some fireworks left over. Layla, you in? Layla, her hands busy dismantling what looked like a small bomb, grinned. Only if I get to set them off. Nothing says celebration like a couple of well-placed explosions. Rylan shook his head, unable to keep the smile off his face. You all know how to make a guy feel special, but maybe we should start with something simple like surviving the landing. The alien craft dipped, beginning its descent toward Earth. The planet loomed large, a scarred and plague-ridden ball of rock that was somehow still home. A place that had seen more than its share of horror, but still managed to spin, not unlike the crew, really. As they broke through the atmosphere, Rylan considered their journey. They'd started as outcasts, a ragtag band of survivors with nothing but a shared hatred for the Alliance and a penchant for bad jokes. Now they were something more. Heroes? Probably not. But they'd done something, made a dent. And in a universe this big and indifferent, that was no small feat. Touchdown in 10, Thaura announced, her voice cutting through Rylan's thoughts like a knife through butter. Get ready for the hero's welcome. Hero's welcome, Drayle echoed, the sarcasm thick enough to spread on toast. I give it 5 minutes before someone's trying to kill us again. 5, Layla asked, arching an eyebrow. You're an optimist, Drayle. The alien craft settled onto the surface with a grace that belied its crew. Outside, the crystal wilderness of Ventara stretched on, a jagged landscape of danger and beauty. As they disembarked, Rylan took a moment to breathe. The air smelled of ozone and earth, familiar, even comforting. It was a reminder that for all its faults, this was still home. Welcome back, Thaura said, her tone almost warm, to whatever this place has become. Rylan nodded, feeling the weight of their journey in his bones. Not exactly a palace, but it'll do. The crew spread out, each taking a moment to adjust. Jack stretched, the motion shaking off the tension of space travel. Layla fiddled with her gear, while Drayle busied himself with his handheld, no doubt ensuring they hadn't become public enemy number one again. Think they'll throw us a parade? Jax asked, his tone teasing. More like a mob with pitchforks, Drayle replied, not looking up from his screen. But hey, what's life without a little excitement? The landscape was both haunting and beautiful, a testament to resilience in the face of destruction. Rylan took it all in, the weight of the universe settling around him like an old coat. They'd done something incredible, made a stand, revealed the truth, and somehow lived to tell the tale. But the galaxy was vast, and their fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. So, Captain, Layla said, joining him, where to now? Rylan considered the question, the infinite possibilities stretching out before them. I think it's time we took a break from saving the galaxy. Maybe find a nice quiet corner to hide in for a while. A beach, Jax suggested, his voice hopeful. Sun, sand, and not a laser blast in sight. Sounds nice, Rylan admitted. But knowing us, it'll probably be more like a sandbox under fire. Optimism, Captain, Thaura said, her voice a rare mix of humor and sincerity. It's unbecoming. Yeah, well, Rylan replied, looking at his crew, his family. Maybe it's time we tried it on for size. The galaxy was still out there, vast and uncaring, but for now they had each other, and that was more than enough. As they turned to head back to the ship, Rylan allowed himself a moment of peace. They'd faced the dark and come out the other side, battered, bruised, but unbroken. No small feat for a bunch of misfits with nothing to lose. Let's get out of here, he said, leading the way. I hear there's a beach somewhere with our name on it. The crew followed, their laughter echoing across the crystal landscape. The future was uncertain, the path ahead fraught with peril, but with his crew by his side, Rylan knew they could face whatever came next. Together, they would fight for their place among the stars, one battle at a time, and maybe, just maybe, they'd find a little peace along the way. As the ship lifted off, Rylan took one last look at the landscape, a reminder of all they'd been through and all they'd yet to face. Hope was a rare commodity in their line of work, but they'd found it, against all odds, and in the grim corridors of space, that was the most powerful weapon of all.